Hi, I'm pleased to welcome Senator Peter Harder to this series of conversations with 1970s Grebel alumni. I expect that Peter is well known among alumni of our era. After graduate studies at Queen's University, he spent most of his career in Ottawa, much of it in its upper echelons of the civil service. He served as deputy minister under 5 different prime ministers and 12 ministers in a highly diverse set of government departments. He was appointed Canada's first independent senator in 2016 and served as government representative in the Senate until 2020. He continues to sit in the Red Chamber as an independent and a member of its Progressive Caucus. Thanks for taking the time to share this conversation with us today, Peter.
Happy to do so. Nice to see you, Larry.
From stocking shelves to in your father's grocery store to Canada's Senate, it's been quite a ride for you. You've had all kinds of experiences along the way, and I haven't even mentioned a lot of the interactions and involvements you've had with other agencies like the Refugee Board and the Canada-China Business Council. Where did all that impetus for public service, government and public service come from? And did it precede your University of Waterloo days?
Yeah, I think it did, Larry. I think you'd have to say it's part of the environment in which I grew up. As you know, both of my parents came to Canada as young refugees from the Soviet Union, part of that Mennonite exodus. And I was brought up in a community, Vineland, where the whole idea of contributing back to your community that reflected your faith community was part of growing up. And it was not unusual for me then to pursue a career in public service as opposed to strictly a business career or frankly going back and running my father's store.
Who are the people at Grebel when you finally got there after high school? And you should maybe say a little bit about whether Grebel was something that was always on your mind, or whether that was a sort of a last minute grade 13 kind of decision. But who are the people at Grebel, whether at the college itself or at the University of Waterloo across Laurel Creek there, who
Right.
really nurtured your interest in this area?
Well, university was an expectation that my parents built in my imagination, and when I was deciding where to go, my father, I suspect, arranged a visit to see Dr. Fretz, Winfield Fretz, at the university at Grebel, and I, as a grade 13 student, drove up to Waterloo and spent some time with him, and he very much welcomed me as a prospective student at Grebel. And that was how I was recruited, in the sense of feeling that I certainly wanted to do university, but a Mennonite college on the university campus was viewed as a safe and appropriate environment for a small town boy from the Niagara Peninsula.
At that time, there were only a couple of faculty members, right? There maybe would have been President Fretz and Walter Claussen. And
Walter Claussen, Helen Martins, and then John Taves came. Frank Epp started the year I was contemporaneous with Frank's period and was the student rep on the president's selection committee when he was selected.
All right. I remember Frank also being instrumental in, I don't know whether he sent you to a conference in Ottawa or whether you did that on your own, but I remember some kind of connection there.
Yes. Well, I had a number of experiences while at Grebel that Frank inspired. The World Federalists was an organization that Frank was involved with when he lived in Ottawa before he went to Grebel. And I became involved in that, as well as the Peace Research Institute and their summer camp at Grindstone Island. So I was doing some of those things while I was at Grebel as well.
Was Walter Claussen also involved in that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, for some reason I had Grindstone Island and Walter Claussen as related in my mind. Were there other folks in the political science department at the University of Waterloo that played had some effect on your
Oh,
career?
sure. A number of them. John Wilson, who was the Canadian politics professor, Ashok Kapoor, the international policy professor, Jack Kersel, doing public admin. The Williams was the professor on Canadian politics as well, and Peter Wollstonecroft. So I had a very rich experience on the campus, for which I'm very grateful.
What were your other involvements at Grebel? Was it basically a place to live while you were undertaking these studies in political science, or did you get more deeply involved? Presumably you did in Grebel life.
I was quite involved in the student governance and and trying to discipline the water fights that inevitably happened, at least in that era, before they figured out that wire buckets were better than plastic buckets. And the choir, Helen Martins, was the conductor of the choir, and that was a very enriching experience as well. And John Taves came in that period. I quite enjoyed him. So it was, I didn't lack for intellectual stimulation.
Right. He, of course, later became one of Grebel's presidents.
Yes.
And at that time, the music department, music faculty at Grebel was pretty much Helen Martins, wasn't it? It was.
Well, then Bill Jansen came.
Oh, right.
And introduced a bit of jazz.
Yeah. Were there any especially memorable moments, things besides the water fights, I guess, things that you look back on now as being especially character building?
Well, any number, in the sense of I like music, so I still recall various of the choir performances, particularly the Bach Easter music and the like. And Frank was a very intellectually inspiring person to be around. And I still remember in the old library reading those books that stimulated my thinking, whether it was Arthur Gish and the Radical Reformation, or Reinhold Niebuhr, who has become an anchor in my thinking on so many issues. That's part of the intellectual experience of universities.
I remember just being in utter awe of Frank and his schedule, how he could carry a teaching load, administer a college as its president, keep up contacts within the church community as a sort of an itinerant public relations person, write history books. It's just, he was a whirlwind of activity, and I always wondered how he did it.
Yeah, well, and he ran for public office, as you might recall.
That's right.
He's certainly a role model for the activist social thinker.
Grebel's founders in the 1950s and 60s were determined to build an institution that was a residence for Mennonite students in Ontario and beyond. But they were also determined to somehow enhance the dialogue between a large secular university and the Christian faith. A lot has changed in the world since the 1950s and 60s. And I wondered if you could tell us just a little bit about how you think an institution such as Conrad Grebel University College, what role it can play in today's political and religious and geopolitical environment.
Well, Larry, I don't think the basic thesis is changed. It's the whole notion of having a church-based institution on a large campus. I guess the University of Waterloo has changed significantly from when you and I were there, in the sense that its world-class reputation has advanced further than it was. Now it tends to be identified more on the engineering and the technology side of intellect, but the interplay of technology and economics and social policy is one that would come natural to anybody at the University of Waterloo. The whole notion around the ethics of some of these issues. And I benefited from a set of professors who brought the world to me while I could be at Grebel. And I don't think that thesis has changed all that much. What has changed, of course, is the communities from which I came, like Vineland, or in your case, Leamington, and other places that we arrived from, are less singularly Mennonite in their political culture or in their upbringing. And that makes us more cosmopolitan, more aware of the world. But I think it gives us a pretty good tradition from which to insert ourselves in the world of today.
So the tradition of Grebel goes on.
I think so.
I always teach my journalism students to ask a final question, and then that is there anything I've missed? Is there something that you wish I'd asked, or that I obviously should have asked and didn't?
Well, I'm grateful for the number of questions you didn't ask. As to what you might have asked is, I guess, how important it was for me to be socialized in that environment. I remember telling the chef of the day, his name was Eric. It was a Danish pastry chef by background. One day, going through the lineup, that I could cook a better meal than he could, and was rather inappropriate, I guess. And he was good enough to say, "Well, if you think you can, try it." And I made spaghetti and meatballs for the whole dinner one night. And he had a good laugh, and I had a good laugh too. So it wasn't all textbooks and study.
So the new edition should be the Peter Harder Kitchen, something like that.
Yeah.
I remember Eric. The most prominent memory I have of him is, do you remember we used to serve, they used to serve condiments in open bowls, ketchup, mustard, and relish, in cereal type bowls. And some student ahead of me in line one day mocked his ability, or said something he wasn't pleased with. And he took the mustard bowl and he tossed it at the student. And the student caught it, which was extremely impressive. But I'd wondered, what would have happened had that gone really wrong. but Eric was full of beans that way. He was I don't remember his last name, but he was someone who certainly enjoyed the spirit of college life. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter, for spending the time today. It's very much appreciated.
Happy to be here with you.